Hi, One Lit Teacher here. I'm going to talk some more about one of my favorite Shakespeare plays, Romeo and Juliet. And this will be a brief presentation on the structure that Shakespeare has very carefully chosen for this play. So I'm going to start by talking about the character list, and this is a slide that I borrowed from my presentation about characters and conflict, which you can watch and get more detail on in my YouTube video, Characters and Conflict in Romeo and Juliet, on my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher. But basically the structure of the play is really set in motion by the way that Shakespeare has constructed the character lists. The two households, the Montagues and the Capulets, each has a teenage child, one of the title characters, Romeo and Juliet. Each has a set of parents who play a role in the play. Each has an important cousin who plays a role in the action and the conflict of the play. Juliet has the nurse as a confidant, and the nurse has the servant. There are pairs of servants who balance each other out in the play, Balthasar and Abraham on the Montague side, and Samson and Gregory on the Capulet side. And then Friar Lawrence, who's not technically a Montague, who doesn't live with the Montagues like the nurse lives with the Capulets, is nonetheless the most important advisor to Romeo, and he also has an assistant in Friar John. On either side of the character list, there is a character who is not actually part of the family, but is aligned with the family for one reason or another. And importantly, these two characters, Mercutio and County Paris, are both relatives to Prince Aeschylus, which is a factor in the prince's sentencing and changing sentences for the different offenses that occur in the play. The prince, of course, is the neutral character on the list. Prince Aeschylus, the ruler of Verona. Now you could pick out any character pair on this carefully structured list of characters and see what role they play and how they are very important to the structure and the conflicts in the play. But I'm just going to pick two characters that might not seem that important to you. They're not the title characters, but they are the cousins, Benvolio Montague and Tybalt Capulet, who are foil characters in the play. And again, I talk about this convention in more detail in the characters presentation, but foil characters are characters who have opposite qualities. And so examining the qualities of one helps you to highlight and analyze the qualities of the other. And the idea or the name of foil is related to the idea that we set jewels off behind a metal foil to make them shine. And that's what's happening here. But importantly, these two characters who are paralleled on either side of the chart are important aspects of the plot, especially the conflict in the play. But you could take any of the character pairings and do that same kind of analysis to show how the character list is a huge part of the structure of the play. Speaking of that structure, Shakespeare sets up the play, as he does all of his verse plays, in 5 acts. So this is a structure that was modeled by Seneca in ancient Rome and used by many playwrights since. This pattern has become known later as Freytag's model, Freytag's pyramid, and lots of novelists also use this pattern. When we apply it to a play, the introduction or exposition occur in Act 1, and this is where we have the setting and the characters introduced, major conflict introduced, the inciting incident that sets the plot in motion occurs before the end of Act 1. So in the case of Romeo and Juliet, we have the family members and the feud all introduced in Act 1, and the inciting incident of Romeo and Juliet meeting that sets the plot in motion before the end of Act 1. In Act 2, in a Shakespeare play, we have the rising action and plot complications. So here we have Romeo and Juliet professing their love on the balcony, the friar marrying the two lovers, and plot complications such as Tybalt's challenge to Romeo. In Act 3 of a Shakespeare play, we are always going to have the climax or the turning point, which determines the direction of the action that occurs afterward, and it directly impacts the resolution in Act 5. So in this case, it is one very important event. Romeo kills Tybalt. And this impacts Acts 4 and 5. So Act 4 is the falling action, the resulting events or actions after the climax or turning point. In this play, we have situations like Capulet and Paris settling on a wedding date much earlier than we were previously led to believe. because they think that Juliet is grieving excessively for the death of Tybalt. We have Juliet drinking the potion that the friar gives her because she doesn't see any other way out after Romeo has killed Tybalt. And we have Romeo hearing of Juliet's supposed death and buying his own potion or poison to do himself in. And so then we have in Act 5 the catastrophe and the resolution, or what the French might call the denouement. So the catastrophe, of course, is that Romeo and Juliet kill themselves, and the resolution is that the families end their feud once and for all. And it took a huge price to get there, but they do finally come to this resolution before the end of the play. So I'd like for you to think about how the story arc, or the pyramid, really could be thought of or remembered by thinking about your hand. So while there are 5 acts, the key acts in the play are 1, 3, and 5, and the key scenes within those acts are going to be 1, 3, and or 5 as well. So I'll show you what I mean. So in Act 1, we have Scene 1, where the conflict and Romeo are introduced. Act 1, Scene 3, Romeo and a major complication is introduced, or I'm sorry, Juliet and a major complication, which is the idea of her marriage to Paris. Act 1, Scene 5, Romeo and Juliet meet, and that inciting incident then sets the plot in motion. Act 2 is important, but not as important as Act 3, which is where the turning point occurs. Act 3, Scene 1, turning point, where Romeo kills Tybalt. Act 3, Scene 3, Friar Lawrence cements the deception of the lovers' parents by leaving them out of the loop in setting the plans for the lovers to go ahead and be together without the parents' knowledge. Act 3, Scene 5, the lovers' marriage is consummated, and that's an important idea in the play. Again, Act 4 is not unimportant, but the falling action is not nearly as important as what occurs in Act 5. So Act 5, Scene 1, Romeo hears of Juliet's supposed death and then buys the potion to kill himself. And then Act 5, Scene 3, Romeo and Juliet kill themselves. So again, that story arc is sort of mirrored in looking at your hand. You see the triangle or the pyramid, and 1, 3, 5 in terms of acts and scenes are key scenes for you to think about and remember in evaluating, examining this play. Okay, also the events in the play have causal relationships. That means that, like dominoes, one event tips off the next, and so on, like dominoes falling in a row. And we could really extricate any one of those dominoes and then see how, if it didn't happen, another event wouldn't occur, and so on, or how that one event tips off the next, and so on. So, for example, when Romeo meets Juliet, he is so excited by the prospect of love with her that he runs off to her balcony to see her. That excitement at the agreement that they have of their love then leads him to run directly to the friar and not tell anyone else. And that leads to Mercutio and Benvolio not knowing about Juliet when they meet Tybalt on the street, which leads to Mercutio fighting Tybalt even though Romeo doesn't want to fight Tybalt, and so on. The events are causally related and tip each other off like dominoes in a row. Also, in terms of structure, Acts 1 and 2 have prologues. These are Shakespearean sonnets that are delivered by the chorus. They are 14-line poems in iambic pentameter with Shakespeare's famous English rhyme scheme, A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. And again, I talk more about this in my video about language on my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher. There is also another sonnet embedded in the party scene in Act 1, Scene 5, where Romeo and Juliet complete a sonnet together, which is a beautiful moment that's supposed to signify that they were meant for each other, star-crossed lovers. The prologue to Act 1 provides an overview of the play, and in counterbalance of that, the friar's speech in Act 5, Scene 3, gives a more detailed summary of everything that already occurred at that point, but that only the friar knows in sum. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation on the structure of Romeo and Juliet. I hope it was helpful to you. And if it was helpful to you, check out my other presentations on Romeo and Juliet. as well as presentations about poetry by Shakespeare, by John Donne, and also pieces of literature by other great writers. And so please subscribe to my YouTube channel, One Lit Teacher. Thank you.